Welcome back to the channel. This will be the team selection for Gameweek 2 in Fantasy Premier League, and I'll also cover FPL Challenge during Friday's deadline stream around 2 hours before the deadline. I'd hope to have you on board for that one. The same goes for your fantasy content when that returns over the coming weeks. My current FPL Challenge squad comprised of David Raya in goal, at home to Leeds United, Ballard away to Burnley, a midfield two of Salah and Palmer, and also Watkins and Erling Haaland up front. And my current captain is Ollie Watkins. I've been very bullish on him all week. Check out my Transfers podcast to see the reasons why. I also talk about him in my best free hit and wildcard squads, which were separated into 2 podcasts, and I think both of those strategies are certainly viable. But with FPL Challenge this week, it is called the Promoted, so any players from promoted clubs will earn double the number of points, and that's why I've gone for Ballard. But you can only pick one player from every single club, so you can't go for Ballard, Talby or Adingra in the midfield, and then also go for Roofs in goal, and that's why I've been very conscious about my Sunderland pick. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. How will you line up in FPL Challenge, and what are your plans for FPL? Are you going to use a free transfer, take some hits, or use a chip already, like the bench boost, free hit, triple captain, or the wild card? I think a lot of different strategies are flying around, which is great to see with the increased number of boosters this season. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date with my content, whether it's for FPL or UCL Fantasy. And the videos and live streams for the Champions League will return very soon. Check all the links in the description, and you can find me on Patreon by typing patreon.com/FPL Dylan for early access to my videos and many other perks. The Discord server, FPL League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. The same goes for FPL Challenge as well. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. It has been a while, but I'll start off with a review of how I did in the previous game week, and I have to say the Premier League opener was a bit of a mixed bag for me personally. There were some good things, but others not so much. But Robert Sanchez was holding his own with an 8-pointer, a bit fortuitously, I may add, with the way that Chelsea kept that clean sheet, and Robert Sanchez really could have conceded from that free kick by Eze, and the way it was disallowed by VAR was certainly contentious, and Robert Sanchez had other moments throughout the game where he looked shaky, and arguably Crystal Palace could have had another few decisions their way, including Sanchez getting a yellow or red card. But in the end, he got an 8-pointer, and he stole a bonus from Cucurella a bit afterwards. And I don't like the way that FPL do things. I've said this from last season, where they retrospectively change bonus points. I think they should just stick with it. And when you do have a Monday night game like we did between Leeds United and Everton, it gives more chances actually for the bonus points to be changed. And that's what happened with Robert Sanchez, who got a clean sheet, made enough saves to get a save point, and also got a bonus to reward his efforts. In my defensive line, it was also fairly meh, with Murillo and Frimpong conceding, and in the case of the Dutchman, he was subbed off just seconds beforehand, and this could have been very lucky if he was subbed off just after 60 minutes. He could have banked a scammy clean sheet, because soon afterwards Semenyo scored, and he also was the one who made the game very interesting, bringing it to 2-2 at one stage. But I brought in Frimpong for his attacking potential. The minutes were always going to be a concern, but with Conor Bradley out of the picture, I thought he wouldn't be subbed off before 60 minutes anytime soon. But that happened in Game Week 1, and that means once Conor Bradley is back, that'll be very concerning for Frimpong owners, and I'd rather have the security of Virgil van Dijk, who can also get defensive contributions, and so far the Van Dijk owners are winning with 3 points over those Frimpong FPL managers. Now, Murillo is still a very good asset, but he didn't get defensive contribution points. In fact, only Aina did from the Nottingham Forest defenders, and Elliot Anderson in the midfield was so close to picking one up in that position. But it does vary. I think I've been making a big point about this in my recent videos. So for defenders, they need to make 10 defensive actions to get 2 defensive contribution points, and for midfielders and forwards, they need to make 12. So that's where you get some differences, but Murillo will pick up plenty of DEFCON this season, and I'm still very happy about this pick. And ultimately, it was a penalty that reduced that 6-pointer all the way down to 2, and Pedro Porro is there for the attacking potential, but I think he can also be quite decent when it comes to defensive contributions, and he's also got the goals and assist potential from open play. And not only that, with James Maddison's injury for most of this season, Pedro Porro will be on most set pieces, including corners and free kicks. So I think this pick is still justified, but so far those that saved $1 million with Mickey van der Ven have seen no difference whatsoever, as both of them picked up 6 points against Burnley. In the midfield, I had Salah, Cody Gakpo, Reinders, Palmer, and Ndiaye. So a mixture of highs and lows in this team. Mohamed Salah was quite poor throughout the game against Bournemouth, and he left it late, but scored a brilliant goal on his weaker foot, and we really needed that, especially in my case with Mohamed Salah as my captain. And going for Cody Gakpo over Wirtz has paid off so far. The differential Dutchman has been performing in pre-season with multiple goals. He is the inform Liverpool attacker, and against Newcastle and Arsenal, I still think he can get some returns in those matches, followed by Burnley away in Game Week 4. But if you do have Florian Wirtz, don't sell him. That's something I discussed in my Transfers podcast. I think that'd be a massive mistake. And Reinders looks like the most appealing 5.6 million midfielder and under because of the positions he took up against Wolves. But when Nico Gonzalez doesn't start certain games, we could see Reinders play in a deeper position. His versatility is a strength for Manchester City, but maybe not so much for his FPL potential, because sometimes he won't be making those late runs into the box and gate crashing the opponent, because he will have more defensive responsibilities with Rodri out of the picture until September. But I do like him against Tottenham, as I'll talk about very soon. But in terms of the best time to buy him, I would argue that Game Week 3 is probably the best time to buy Reinders if you don't have him already in your FPL team. Cole Palmer blanked, and he got 2 points in the end against Crystal Palace, and his record from open play has been terrible. I've discussed this all summer in the Club World Cup, but he stepped up in that competition, particularly in the knockout stages. But against Crystal Palace, he never looked like scoring or assisting in that game. The same goes for Ndiaye, and Leeds United got a deserved victory against Everton on Monday night. The manner of it was a bit contentious through the penalty, but I still think Leeds United created plenty of chances, and Everton definitely waned in the second half. But I think Ndiaye is still an okay option at 6.5 million, but I think the clear pick here would have been Kudus against Burnley, who got 2 assists for Richarlison in that 3-0 victory for Tottenham Hotspur. As for my forward line, I only had 2 attackers here in Ollie Watkins and Joao Pedro, and they both blanked. I also considered going for Jarrod Bowen and having a front three. He also blanked in that 3-0 loss against Sunderland. Erling Haaland was the standout in this position, getting 13 points, of course, against Wolves, and Reinders assisted one of those goals too. He got an assist as well, and didn't pick up any bonus points, by the way, because of that yellow card that Reinders picked up in the second half. But ultimately, there were some good things about this team, and even those players that blanked, I'm still quite bullish about them for Game Week 2 and beyond, especially in the case of Ollie Watkins facing Brentford, his former club. His record against them is outstanding. On my bench, I had the likes of Dubravka, who considered 3 goals to Tottenham, also Reynildo Mandava, so a slight regret about not starting him, but really it would have been between him and maybe Murillo, and possibly one of my midfielders like Ndiaye. And it's safe to say that a bench boost would have been quite poorly used with this setup in Game Week 1, because Mark Guiu didn't feature whatsoever in that 3-0 win against West Ham United, and that is slightly concerning for those that invested in Mark Guiu as a 4-point family enabler to sometimes rely on him if injuries and suspensions happen. But I think with Guiu, I always had him in mind as a facilitator and enabler for expensive players like Palmer and Salah in my team, and maybe that will change to Erling Haaland at one stage this season. So I got 59 points, and the rank is actually the worst I've ever had by Game Week 1. It seems like every season I'm getting worse, so I need to definitely fix up in certain things. I'm currently at 3.1 million in the rank, so there is definitely room for improvement. It's not the worst start in the world, and ultimately I wouldn't be looking at rank anytime soon, and you shouldn't be giving up at this stage. A few people talked about this in the reaction stream, so always be sure to tune in during the weekend for those deadlines and reactions. They're a lot of fun, and we discuss a lot of different ideas and improve each other's FPL teams. But before I show you my transfer plans, let's discuss some prices very quickly. And the likes of Erling Haaland should go up in price over the coming days. Use websites like livefpl.net. They have some of the best price algorithms that I've seen from any fantasy Premier League website, but expect a lot of volatility and also inaccurate predictions at the beginning of the season, because they are still trying to gauge how any new changes, if there are any, to the price changes, how they're going to work this season, and also because we're still finding out about the best assets and players in the game. The same goes for clubs as well. Robert Sanchez remains at 5 million. He is one of my favourite goalkeepers to start this season alongside Matt Sells. Frimpong is still at 6 million, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him dip to 5.9 million, especially if he blanks against Newcastle in Game Week 2. I also think Murillo will stay quite stable at 5.5 million, but the returns need to come in because of that price tag. And Pedro Porro, the same applies to him, but I think he'll get a lot of investment after Game Week 2, with Spurs having some of the best fixtures of any club up until Game Week 10. Salah and Gakpo should also remain fairly stable at their respective price points, but Reinders is one of only 4 or 5 players at this point now to have gone up in price to 5.6 million. He is still severely underpriced overall, it seems, and Cole Palmer could go down if he blanks against West Ham. I think a lot of us are banking on him to do the goods against a struggling Hammers side, and Ndai is another one who could be very disappointing actually, and there could be some regrets about investing in him over the likes of Kudus. Up front, Ollie Watkins might have a lot of sellers, but I think that is a mistake, and a return against Brentford should ease those kind of plans to sell him for the time being. And I know the temptation to go for Gyökeres is definitely there against Leeds United, especially after Havertz's injury for Arsenal, and it's a serious one, so he could be out for some time, and the Gunners are looking in the transfer market. I mean, they need 2 attackers regardless anyway, but Gyökeres should have his minutes quite sealed now, and he should play 70 plus minutes at the very least. And to be honest, the alternative striker options would be Merino, Martinelli, and also Trossard, who can play there as a false 9, and maybe we can even see a front 2 for Arsenal in certain games if they're chasing a goal, and Leeds United won't be easy this weekend. Joao Pedro is also 7.5 million, but his high ownership means the price could be quite volatile, and a lot depends on his returns. So if he does blank in the next 2, I think Joao Pedro could go down, but I don't think that'll be the case, despite the fact he's never scored or assisted against West Ham United. The likes of Dubravka and Reinildo only cost 4 million, and then I've got Konsa, who was sent off, of course, against Newcastle. He is 4.5, and he could be one of my first transfers out of this season. And Mark Guiu has the exact same price tag, but he's another one with quite high ownership for a budget player. I could see him going down to 4.3 or 4.4 million very soon. But let's discuss some transfers, and one of them is Frimpong to Gabriel. I know the Gunners faced Liverpool away in Game Week 3, and in that matchup, I would prefer Frimpong on paper, but Gabriel has scored at Anfield before. He's also done it at the Etihad, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Stamford Bridge. The only one left is really Old Trafford, but he just got a victory there on Sunday, a 1-0 win for the Gunners, and defensively, they can be rock solid, but the overall performance wasn't there, and I think Arsenal have many areas to improve if they want to challenge for the Premier League title this season. But Gabriel can get defensive contribution points, goals from set pieces, the odd assist here and there, and plenty of bonus points along the way, so I'm quite keen on that transfer. But another one I'm looking at is a defensive move, selling Konsa to another 4.5 million option like Chris Richards or Mark Gay, whose future at Crystal Palace remains uncertain, and I think both of them can offer plenty of defensive contribution potential. And you've also got Lacroix at 5 million, who's one of my favourite options defensively, and Daniel Munoz at 5.5 million. But I think Palace have so many different ways of covering them defensively, with Tyrick Mitchell also scoring defensive contribution points against Chelsea. But I've only got, well, nothing in the bank actually. So in terms of selling Konsa, I don't want to take a hit, and I think a -4 is probably unjustified at this stage of the season. So if I sell Konsa right now, it would be for another 4.5 million choice like Chris Richards, but he's not the only one I'm looking at. A like-for-like replacement would be Konsa's teammate Matty Cash, and he also scored DEFCON points in the opener against Newcastle. He also offers more attacking threat than Konsa, but we don't really see too many goals or assists from Matty Cash besides that famous double game week from a few years ago, and Aston Villa are top of the fixture difficulty rating until Game Week 8. But let's build this starting 11 for Game Week 2 without using the free hit, which is still a possibility for my setup, and it's something I discussed throughout pre-season. But in goal, I'd have Robert Sanchez away to West Ham, despite the fact that on my bench, I would have Martin Dubravka facing Sunderland at home, and a 0-0 draw is possible, as you'll see in my predictions in a future podcast. If you want to see a predicted lineups video, then let me know down in the comment section below. That's where I'd also include my scoreline predictions, and in my deadline stream, I'll also be showing you many different graphics as well. But Chelsea have a decent record against West Ham, and they won 3-0 last season away from home, and I think Robert Sanchez is still a solid choice, despite some kind of scary blips you could get from him as a goalkeeper and in terms of individual performances. But I think the Robert Sanchez pick is about investing in Chelsea defensively. You can also do this through Marc Cucurella, but I don't recommend the rest, whether it's Reece James, Malo Gusto, Tosin, and all these other options you've got like Chalobah, because you're going to see a lot of rotation between those players. In my defensive line, I've got Gabriel, potentially Murillo and Reinildo Mandava, but I haven't made this transfer yet, and it could still be Frimpong facing Newcastle away and rolling the transfer until Game Week 3. I haven't ruled that out, but at this moment in time, the most likely avenue is for me to buy Gabriel in my team and bolster that defensive line when Arsenal host Leeds United at home. Murillo remains a decent option facing Crystal Palace away from home, and a lot of their games have been 1-1 in the past. That is my current prediction in terms of the scoreline, but I always seem to have Nottingham Forest with a 1-1 draw, so I need to change things up a little bit when it comes to them. And I think completing this defensive line with Renildo Mandava facing Burnley away is solid, but the alternative is Pedro Porro, who is currently on my bench. He faces Manchester City, and he got a big return at the Etihad last season. I don't think a clean sheet is likely, to be honest. I think, in fact, Man City would be the favourites to win this game, despite having a lot of problems against Tottenham Hotspur in the past. But Porro has so many avenues to points that benching him could be a mistake. But in terms of Nottingham Forest, Arsenal and Sunderland, all of them have a much better chance of keeping a clean sheet compared to Tottenham Hotspur in Game Week 2. And in the case of Sunderland, I think they'll keep plenty of clean sheets at the Stadium of Light and get a lot of positive results, even against some of the best clubs in the country. But away from home is a different story, and Burnley weren't terrible against Tottenham. They had some good moments, and I think it'll be a very competitive game in Game Week 2, and I don't think Sunderland have a victory written all over it. In the midfield, I'm going for that sort of five-man structure with Salah, Gakpo, Reinders, Palmer, and Ndiaye. The weak link at this moment in time seems to be Ndiaye, so he is one that I'm keeping an eye on in terms of the chopping block, but I'll give him another week, I think, to prove himself and see what he's about, and if Everton can improve from a poor pre-season, and their Game Week 1 performance was also very poor. Mohamed Salah and Gakpo facing Newcastle away should be fireworks, I think, because that game is going to have so much context and a lot of drama behind the scenes, and I think that could also make its way onto the pitch with the Alexander Isak saga, and I'm expecting a high-scoring thriller here. It could be, going either way, and currently I'm going for a 2-2 draw there, and that could really favour the likes of Salah and Gakpo in that match. Reinders facing Tottenham is still decent. He's not my favourite option. If I had to pick between him and Borro, I would lean towards Reinders, but I think Reinders could still play a deeper role, as I mentioned before, and it could happen as soon as Game Week 2, and I don't think this is the best time to buy him and chase last week's points, but in the long term, I think Reinders will be a successful transfer, and he'll be the best option at that price and below, especially if Douglas Luiz signing for Nottingham Forest means that Anderson sees a reduction in his minutes. But I've been talking about this in my recent streams. I believe that Sangare could make way, and we'll see a midfield pivot for Forest of Elliot Anderson and also Douglas Luiz, and that would look really solid in the long term, whilst Nico Dominguez is out injured. And in terms of the FPL prospects of these players, I think Salah and Palmer are the standouts for the captaincy. The others are enough in terms of owning. I'm not going to consider them for the armband, but the same doesn't apply to my forwards, especially Ollie Watkins, who has 6 goals and 2 assists in 7 Premier League games against Brentford, and that was against decent Brentford sides. I think this one is definitely lacking at the moment, and they might get there at one stage under Keith Andrews, but it's not looking too good at this moment in time. So I am backing Aston Villa to win this match, and I think Ollie Watkins will be pivotal. He should be considered for the captaincy, and I think he's closer to a Salah, Palmer and Erling Haaland this week than he is to a Sal. Joao Pedro is my other forward. He was poor on his Premier League debut for Chelsea, but we saw what he did in the Club World Cup and in the recent pre-season friendlies against AC Milan and Bayer Leverkusen. He isn't a sell just yet, but definitely that was not a convincing performance, and Chris Wood looks like the best of the 7.5 million forwards, and of course he went up to 7.6 million a couple of days ago. On my bench, I've got Dubravka, Pedro Porro, Mark Guiu, and the suspended Ezri Konsa. And you might argue that buying Gabriel for Frimpong seems like a luxury, especially when I've got a red-carded player on my bench, and the likes of Dubravka and Pedro Porro might deserve a start, considering their fixtures, or in the case of Dubravka anyway, and the clean sheet potential. And I think Porro is just a quality FPL asset, and he should easily get 100 plus FPL points this season, which is something he didn't do in the previous campaign. But with the captaincy, Mohamed Salah is currently my vice, and I've given it to Cole Palmer, who has struggled from open play in 2025, but I still think West Ham are there for the taking, and a late change to Ollie Watkins would not be out of the question. I think if I wanted to go a little bit differential, Ollie Watkins as my captain is the way I'd go. Those 3 players are really the prime candidates for the armband. I am missing Erling Haaland, Bukayo Saka and Victor Gyökeres, who looked sharp in training today. I did go to the open training for Arsenal on Wednesday morning, and a few key players missed out, like Ben White, Christian Norgard, and Kai Havertz, who of course is injured, as I discussed before, and Gabriel Jesus remains out. So I think Gyökeres will be nailed on in terms of the minutes. But would I sell Ollie Watkins to the Swedish striker? At this moment in time, I don't think that's worthwhile. And over the next 6 to 7 game weeks, Ollie Watkins is still one of the best forwards in Fantasy Premier League, only bettered by Erling Haaland. Now, one key question in Fantasy Premier League is Mohamed Salah versus Erling Haaland. Should we sell the Egyptian to go for the Norwegian robot? And my advice throughout the summer was to stick with what you have and give it time to breathe. So in the case of Erling Haaland, he outperformed Salah in Game Week 1, but that doesn't mean we should sell one to the other, especially if it's part of a -4 hit, which invariably it would be, because you're selling Salah to downgrade to another midfielder and then upgrading a forward as well. I don't think Salah is worth selling, especially for a -4 hit. So the best thing to do is not chase last week's points and give things time to prove themselves, especially quality assets like Palmer and Salah, who were very disappointing in Game Week 1, you could say, especially Palmer, but it's not worth selling certain players just yet. And we only have 1 week's worth of data and observations. But before I use the website FPL.team, let's discuss expected points, and these stats are taken by Fantasy Football Hub. Robert Sanchez has an expected points figure of 3.6, which seems quite low actually. Martin Dubravka on my bench has 3.9. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Who would you start between the sticks in Game Week 2? But one thing that's not up for debate is starting Gabriel if I buy him in, because the expected points is 5.8 against Leeds United. Murillo has 4.1 and Reinildo has 3.4. Salah has 7.3, so he's always the highest according to Fantasy Football Hub. Gakpo has 5. Reinders is at 4.5. Cole Palmer, though, is at 6.4 as my current captain. And Ndai still has 4.8, which is fairly decent on paper. Ollie Watkins offers 5.7 predicted points, and Joao Pedro is slightly lower at 4.9. The other options who are on my bench include Pedro Porro at exactly 3, Mark Guiu at 2.2, and Ezri Konsa, of course, won't play. He is suspended for Game Week 2 after that straight red card for a professional last man foul. He has 0.0 expected points. So I'll be using FPL.team as well. Their expected points will be much harsher on paper compared to Fantasy Football Hub and the other algorithms I refer to on this channel. But I think the main plus and the main advantage to using that website is to visualize future transfers, compare chip strategies, and see the best course of action for your FPL teams. Without making a transfer, I would have Frimpong away to Newcastle and Gabriel would have to wait another day. I certainly wouldn't buy him ahead of Liverpool away in Game Week 3, but he is a big game player, we all know this. Robert Sanchez between the sticks against West Ham away. Dubravka, that is going to be one of my biggest dilemmas in terms of the team selection. And if we look at the predicted points by FPL.team, they recommend starting Dubravka. And also, if we make this Frimpong to Gabriel transfer, we'll see how the expected points changes. So it actually goes up to 50. There's a 2.1 difference, and bringing in Dubravka will also make this even better at 51.2. With the captaincy, they recommend Salah over Cole Palmer, so that is the best course of action according to this website. And apart from that, the rest is pretty much as is. So Ezri Konsa still has 2.71 expected points, but he is unavailable as mentioned before. And in terms of Reinildo versus Pedro Porro, they recommend starting the Spaniard away to Man City. So that is something else I'll need to weigh up during that deadline stream on Friday. But if I were to go for a free hit, it could look something like this. And check out my best free hit team video because I discussed different structures there. And that is the definitive sort of thing I'm looking at in terms of that chip in Game Week 2. But I could go for David Raya in goal and also Gabriel in that defensive line. So doubling up on Arsenal defensively instead of their attack, which looked quite weak in Game Week 1 against Man United. Cucurella, Munoz and Truffert forms a decent defensive line, and I think the latter deserves an honourable mention because he played very well against Liverpool despite that 4-2 defeat. The likes of Saka, Cunha, Rodgers and Semenyo is quite solid in the midfield with Erling Haaland and Watkins up front, so no Gyökeres at the moment, and on the bench it's full of enablers like Dubravka, Reinildo, Josh King and also Krupi Jr. at 4.5 million. The expected points is 60.2, so there is a considerable difference between this and my normal team with everything optimized according to FPL.team, the website. And with the captaincy, Erling Haaland would be the preference according to this, with 7.76 expected points against Tottenham, while Saka is second at 6.6. And actually something interesting that happened in Arsenal training was that Saka started on the left-hand side and Madueke was on the right, and he looked quite sharp actually, and they could interchange in the actual match. And something I expect Arsenal to do over the coming weeks is start Madueke over Martinelli, and we could see him and Saka both alternate at right wing and left wing. So that could be another problem for opposition teams as well. But Arsenal seriously need to upgrade that left winger spot. I know Trossard was given a pay rise without an extension, which was quite ridiculous actually, but considering the Havertz news, that might make a bit of sense now, and they still need 2 more attackers, whether it's a midfielder or a winger, a striker, you name it, but I think a left winger is probably the priority for Arsenal. Let's see what they can do before the end of the transfer window. But that's a 50-man squad on the free hit, and I also discussed other structures, of course, in that free hit video, so be sure to check that out. Mohamed Salah should not be discounted. He is still a great option against Newcastle away, and ultimately, whether you free hit, wildcard, do nothing, or make transfers, there will be an element of risk to everything you do, but you need to be decisive and go into Game Week 2 with an open mind, and once that deadline hits, hopefully you're well prepared. And by watching my videos, I think that will be the case with the transfer tips, the best free hit and wildcard squads, this team selection, and the predicted lineups, if you want to see it. By this point, I really hope I don't jinx this particular pick because I have him in my FPL team, but Brentford is a team worth targeting. They concede so many chances in central areas, and this was based on what happened last season, but in Game Week 1, of course, that was certainly the case, and you will see here. Of course, we don't have too much data just yet in terms of chances conceded and the heat map, but Ollie Watkins is my highlighted player for Game Week 2. He is being sold, not in droves, but I think a considerable number of FPL managers are switching him to Gyökeres or just selling Ollie Watkins because of that blank against Newcastle, and that would be a massive mistake. He still has excellent fixtures. Brentford away is one of them now, and he has the capability and the goal record to really punish his former club, and selling him would be a massive mistake. I'll talk about this in the deadline stream on Friday, and also talk about my predictions, the top 10 captains, the clean sheet odds, the updated versions. You can also find those kind of graphics and stats in my recent videos, which I mentioned just a few minutes ago. So be sure to check out all my Game Week 2 content and keep your eyes peeled for UCL Fantasy once that returns to the channel. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found insightful, then like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also hit that notification bell so you're always up to date with my content, whether it's for FPL or UCL Fantasy. And our aim is to get this to about 200 likes on YouTube and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 35,000 subscribers. Follow me on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, further access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, FPL League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. The same goes for FPL Challenge as well. I'll see you on Friday for the next deadline stream, and keep your eyes peeled for UCL Fantasy content.